Hello, everybody, and welcome to Secondary Tiered Engagement in Social Emotional Learning. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and my once and always colleague, Barry Roth, who is, he has many things, not least amongst them, he's a teacher, a middle and high school teacher and coordinator of community schools at Encina High School in San Juan Unified School District. And he is also a member of the executive board of the San Juan Teachers Association and the high school director there. So one of the things we love about connecting with Barry, if you had a chance to check out his an article featuring him and other educators in the California Educator, is that you really get a good perspective of the role of teacher, leader, union leader, kind of, and how that can really shape some incredible policies that support teachers and support kids at school sites. And throughout a district. So Barry, we are so excited to have you. And I'm going to hand it off to you in a minute. But before I do that, I've got some just a couple of things to run through, if you wouldn't mind advancing the slide for me. So you have made it to the one works. That one works.
Okay.
So this is the end of week one of the distance learning support launch, the distance learning series of 1 hour webinars by practitioners, for practitioners. This webinar series came about as a result of you telling us the things that you needed to help you get started with the school year. You created the scope and sequence for this, and we went out and we found practitioners that are doing the work and connected you directly to them. So it's, you know, it's just an intimate conversation with teachers, practitioners, and 1,000 of their closest colleagues or so. Today, we're kind of moving away from the rich content and effective pedagogy focus area, and we're heading into social emotional learning. We're going to be moving on Monday into equity, access, and agency. And I'll talk a little bit about the end, but I will step out from behind the sort of facilitator's desk and actually kind of put my content hat on, which is exciting for me. So, all right, next slide, please. You have all, you know, if you have been here throughout the week, you've heard me sort of talk a little bit about schools and communities first. Prop 15 coming up in November. This is something we need unless you feel like we in California have too much money in our public schools. We do not, in fact, have enough money in our public schools. And so Prop 15 it is critical that we get the word out. Each one teach one, tell your colleagues, tell your friends, hijack a conversation at dinner. We have resources for you. There's a hyperlink below. I'll pop it in the chat once I hand it off to Barry. And since I wanted to kind of, you know, use this opportunity to provide some context around, there's a tool on there that I think really puts this in perspective. And that's the calculator on the CTA website that tells you how much your local district would get as a result of Prop 15. And so Barry, could you take it on one more slide?
Yeah.
So this is, I just popped in the information for San Juan Unified School District, Barry's school district in Sacramento County. And with the passage of Prop 15, the share of funds that would be directed into San Juan Unified School District would be close to $25 million. Barry, you think the kids and teachers could use that? Is that
I think that would be a little bit helpful, and especially as we're thinking this next year. This year the budget's not so rough, right? But the following year is scary.
Yep. The can was just kicked down the road. We still have kind of that decline in revenue that's going to hit budgets, and we got to get this in place. It's not enough, but it's something. All right. So that's all I have for you today. I am just so honored and excited to introduce Barry and to hand it over to him. And we look forward to listening and learning from you folks. I will be in the Q&A portion of this. I will not be monitoring much of the chat unless I have a chance, just because there's a lot of stuff flying around. So please, the chat this is Teachers Helping Teachers. If you're in the chat, you see a teacher asking a question that you know the answer to, you know, @ their name and load some resources in there, send them a link, give them some support. And thank you so much for being here. We're grateful for you. Barry, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks so much, Adam, for that introduction. You know, I want to start before I really introduce myself just with this slide. And just going to give people a moment just to look at it. And what do you see? As we move to this, just kind of thinking, and the interesting thing about doing this virtually, right? This is a great one if we're here in person because you can read the crowd. But what are we seeing? If you describe that scene, what do you see? We see a student we see hunger and homelessness and sickness, right? But it's baggage, right? He's carrying that baggage and he's asking for help, actually asking for help, which sometimes students don't, oftentimes students don't. And he's running late, right? Another student looks pretty nimble, just has a regular backpack on, able to move swiftly past. An adult, perhaps standing a bit of a distance, we don't know what that person is thinking. So my question is just to kind of to think about it, to engage a little bit about where we are today is, have we seen this before? And I imagine if we were all in the same room, there would be a lot of heads nodding, right? And we're picturing students who we've had, right? The other question before we move to that third one, another one that I like to interject is, we know sickness and hunger and homelessness, but our students, as they come back, and some of you already are back, what else do they have? What other baggage do they have, right? Worldwide pandemic, economic hardships. We finally, as a country, are addressing our historic white supremacy and the systemization of that, right? That's baggage. So when we think about how does it make you feel, I imagine for a lot of us, right, that's a heavy burden on us. Right? We feel empathy, we feel despair, we feel challenged in how we can support our kids. So not trying to start this off in such a serious tone and a difficult tone, but we're going to get at where we want to go with this is, what can we do with this? Where can we move? How can we be successful in our classrooms, feel real confident, and have a fantastic year despite everything that's going on? So quickly with today's goals, right? I want to talk about, and you're going to hear me say a lot, understanding what we can and can't control. There are things that we definitely have great control of. We're skilled educators, right? We're professionals. This is our career. This isn't a job. It's not something we just decided to do. We're very good at what we do. We're very good at our craft. And there's things we can't control, and we'll touch on that a little bit. I want to provide some day one ready tools, some things. So when you leave here, it's not just all philosophical or what some school did or something like that, that you can take some things with you, both mindset and then some actual tools, things that you can use in your classroom. A little insight to systems change. You'll hear a little bit about what our school has done to bring about change. That might be something that you're not going to take on this year with everything going on with distance learning and things like that. But perhaps you can get involved. So I want to just touch on that. Basics of trauma. We don't have enough time to get really deep with that. Basics of self-care, networking. So use that chat. Help each other out. With this recording, that chat is preserved. So you can go back and you can see what people shared. And if you've been taking these, been sitting in on these and participating, you've seen a wealth of resources, which is fantastic. The last thing, I'm hoping that people leave here feeling a sense of confidence, some ease and excitement, right? Because we love what we do. So real quick, I probably should have put it aside. As Adam said, I'm Barry Roth. I teach at Encina 6 through 12 high school. 10 years ago, we absorbed the middle school when they closed. And so we're 6-12 public school, comprehensive high school, going through some changes like everyone. And I am on executive board. Coordinator of community schools means providing wraparound services for our families, and been a teacher for 21 years, 14 at the school I'm currently at. So just a little bit if you're wondering, and you'll have contact information at the end. So I have this slide, our task, our burden. I'm thinking about that this year. So we've got a few things that I think are timely with the environment we have, with where we are with COVID and where we are just beginning a school year. So teamwork. Teaching is never easy to do on your own, right? I think that we all know that. I think that's ever more present. Now, I'm not going to read all the slides to you, but have you built relational trust? And can you do that? And we'll come back to this as a theme throughout, but I think that's important. This one always worries me, sense of urgency, right? Other people's problems and urgency, it's not ours. You have to get a classroom set up, right, in an entirely different manner than you've ever set up a school year before, right? That's your urgency. Your own care, your own self is your urgency. So, we're going to also talk about setting limits, saying no, but we don't want to hijack our own ability to think critically. We're going to connect that with kids. Time, right? Always difficult. So it's our most valuable resource. And as it says at the end there, right? Have you had time to think about SEL, social emotional learning, as a lever for equity? And equity, we're going to talk about that next week in this series too. So these all nicely flow together. Complexity, last year, right? I mean, it was rough. This year's going to be rough too. We've got some experience with distance learning. I think we'll be all right, but it is going to be difficult. How are we going to prepare ourselves, right, to move with the flux? And as you saw, one of the goals, some self-care. We'll do it with our students, and hopefully we can do it with ourselves. It's important too. All right. And this feeling overwhelmed. So trust your feelings, right? You're going to feel overwhelmed. We all do at times. One of the beauties of what we do is because we care so much, but it can also be so burdensome. So we'll go, like I said, we want to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. And I'm going to pause on this one. We've heard the oxygen mask analogy a lot with teaching, right? You're flying on an airplane. They tell you if the masks drop, you put it on yourself first before you administer care to someone younger who can't do it themselves. We have to take care of ourselves first. If we do that, we'll be able to provide great care to our students. But if we don't care for ourselves first, then we can't get there. Again, kind of a downer, but we're going to pick this up. So I want us to feel uplifted, but I think we have to acknowledge these things exist because otherwise they'll creep up on us. All right. So gets a little intense here at the start, but this is what you signed up for. So SEL and as well as our distance learning model. So trauma, we hear this term used a lot. I'm imagining, if we're in the same room with a great many people, and how many people have heard of trauma-informed care? How many people have heard about, ACEs and things like that? And that's talked about a lot more, but we oftentimes don't know what to do with it. So I'm hoping that what you leave after we go through this is an understanding what trauma is, being able to understand your kids better, and then also being able to help them more effectively, as well as yourself, right? We're traumatized. On the 13th of March, things changed. That was traumatizing, right? This applies when you're dealing with your colleagues, not dealing when you're working with your colleagues, when you're reflecting on your own practices, as well as your students. So let's break it down here. So kind of a little bit of a confusing slide. I try not to flow things like this, but I think it paints a good picture, right? Trauma has three parts. So you've got the event, right? There's some danger, extreme threat, or harm. You can think of a lot of what's going on now. We've got a lot of events, one after the other, right? Which then we'll look at complex trauma. Our students, and as you've looked at this before, even when we were in person, right? This happens, right? So we experience it. Second part, fight, flight, or freeze, right? So when we talk about, you're hijacking your brain, that's how we're wired. Unless we have some skills, and this is where we're headed. What can we do to combat that? What can we do to alleviate that? So we're not feeling helpless to escape. So we're not overwhelmed because we want to be able to function. We want to be able to and have our kids at a high cognitive level. All right. So if we don't take care of it, the effect, right? We're dysregulated. There's lasting effects. We're not able to think. So sometimes when our students act out all of a sudden in a manner that's not consistent to typical school behavior, we hand out a test and our student flips over the desk and yells F you to us and storms out. It's not about you. And it's not about your test, right? That's about something that's been going on in their life. And that's a time. So when that happens, instead of just getting on the kid and reacting, right? We're going to come at it a different way, and those are the skills that we'll learn. Complex psychological trauma, I just mentioned it, right? Repetitive and prolonged. How long have we been in this, right? Sheltering in place, things like that. And some of our kids, what were they experiencing prior to that? It involves harm and abandonment, right? And it occurs at a developmentally vulnerable time. So our kids, right, when this stuff happens to them, we have some coping mechanisms. Our brain is wired, has grown, has established itself. Our prefrontal cortex, right, when that finishes developing in our late teens, early 20s, we can roll with this. Where our kids, they're not there yet. So we have to give them some time and some understanding of why they act sometimes in the manner they do, that it's beyond them. So ACEs. How many of you heard of ACEs? Study out of Kaiser. When we talk about ACEs, we're talking about lasting health impacts. That's where Kaiser looked at it first. So they were seeing a bunch of data. They do this study. They come up with these 10 experiences that end up causing health effects down the road. So they're looking at the impact on individuals' health, from diabetes to heart problems, coronary problems, and things of that nature. Abuse, right? So emotional abuse and physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, right? And household dysfunction. And this is the one I think that, at least my staff, that we spent a little more time on, because I think this is sometimes what's maybe a little more surprising, but also makes great logical sense. So in homes when there's divorce, right? Really common, still one ACE. So, and there's an ACE assessment. I do caution people in taking it. So let me pause with this. There are some schools, there are some people out there that think, and I support our Surgeon General, California Surgeon General's intent to really infuse our schools with ACEs. I think that her intent is good in the direction. I believe that we have to provide our students with coping mechanisms before we give the ACEs assessment, because I can't, in good conscience, give someone an assessment, say, hey, you've been through all this and it's going to have an impact, but I haven't given you a coping mechanism. But for us as practitioners, when we know a little bit about our students, the neighborhoods, maybe some of the demographics that we see, that, oh, I see that the county or the city is showing that our students come from an area of high abuse or things of that nature. It gives us some insight, right? So we do a lot with teaching coping mechanisms before we might dig deeper into having students take the assessments. And the same true for us. But, an incarcerated relative, mental illness in the home. So it's not the student's mental illness, but someone in the home, there is a lasting impact. And so we really need to be aware of that. But that's not it. I think some people, when this came out, people gravitated towards it. Fantastic study, valid study, great insight. But there's more, unfortunately, more to what our kids and what people experience. Now, you'll have access to these slides, and I know it might be a little bit difficult to read, but what this is really showing is you have ACEs, but that's just part of the picture. We also have the environment, historical trauma. So, obviously we're all aware, right, of the protests and our country finally beginning to address the institutionalized white supremacy, right? That's historical trauma for many of our students, right? For our Black and Indigenous students, that's historical. That has been weighing on them and their families. Where some of us, people who live in my skin, I don't have that, right? But I need to be aware of that with my kids. The environment, from noise pollution to the neighborhood which I teach in, and my students, there's police helicopters up a lot, and there's sirens quite a bit. There's just, when you're hearing that quite a bit, right, that's going to impact you. So we've got ACEs and we have this. And I'm getting into this at the beginning because I think we really need to set the stage. And I said it a little bit before, because what can we control and what can't we? Unfortunately, I can't change dramatically what is going on in a student's home. Now, I can file a CPS report. I can provide a student with coping mechanisms, get them into counseling, perhaps help the family through some economic times. I'm very fortunate to have the position I have, where I'm providing wraparound services. But that's what I do. But if I was full-time classroom teacher still, I might not be able to do all those things. In my outside of profession life, maybe I am at protests, and maybe I am, right, casting my vote to bring about change. But I really just, you'll hear me say it a number of times, We have to take care of ourselves. We have to focus on what we can control because there are things that we just can't. All right. So thinking of this and then where we're going in a minute with SEL. So this is a kind of the last one with trauma. Take a quick glance through this. Try a little wait time, which is difficult when I'm not seeing you all face to face. But what is this? Have you seen these behaviors? So just take a quick look through that. And have you seen that? And this is, I use the slide with our staff. The energy in the room shifted. So I didn't even say like anything. I just put the slide up by itself. So I was talking, I was presenting, and just left it there. Room went silent, the energy shifted, and people started turning to each other, right? This is what we see with a lot of our students. I anticipate we're going to see this more coming back, right? So we want to be ready, and that's why you're here. We're preparing ourselves so when our children come back, that we're prepared, right? That we know to expect this. So yeah, it kind of makes sense sometimes why kids distrust us. Hey, hand over your phone, right? When we're using that language, no, they don't want to hand it over. Even if all the other kids or other kids know, like, he's going to give it back, they may not trust us, right? They might be withdrawn. That aggressive behavior where we see it as there's a potential for us to see it as aggressive and as bad and as inappropriate. And it may be some of those things, but why are they doing it? To gain some control. If I don't have control in my life, I'm going to do something to try to gain control, right? And so I don't want to read through the whole list, but kind of when we start thinking about some of the students who do come to the surface, whether you want, they're in the office a lot or receiving detentions or some different behaviors, it kind of starts to make sense when you put yourself in their shoes, right? That, oh, that's why the defiance is happening, right? And this is research based. This isn't just something that with a few years of teaching, or it's a good number now, but that I just think like, oh, I've seen this pattern, right? This is research based. And so it should give us a framework when we come back and we've experienced it. How do we deal with it? And we're going to get to the how. All right. So let's start moving a little bit to how. I think these two slides, and I want to spend a little bit of time on them, really can help frame things. So we just covered really heavy stuff, right? Kind of sad stuff. For some of you, perhaps picturing some of your students who have been impacted. And that's why you're here. And we need to acknowledge that. You need to acknowledge that within yourself, knowing, hey, I've come to a place so I can help my students. But here's two things that I don't know if we always think of. And this slide will kind of refer back to as we go through some other things. So this research puts out there that all students, but especially our students who are impacted by trauma, right? They're thriving with established expectations. I am imagining every single one of you in a normal school year, you have expectations. You establish them for your students from day one. You were doing it from the day that last bell of the previous school year. When that bell rang, you're already thinking, next year, man, I never got to something, right? You're already thinking of that. But in blue, right? But for the kids impacted by trauma, look at what that says. It tells them when you're holding those high expectations that they're capable and they're worthy. To me, like that kind of blew me away. But as you read more about it, and I'm sure many of you very well know this, right? Our students begin to lose their self-worth. For our Black and Indigenous students, they're hearing so much, right? If they're on social media and in the news and all of that, they're hearing two messages, right? They're hearing from a power structure that says they don't have worth. But then they're hearing from the other side, right? Of course, that they do. And so we need to help them realize that. The other bullet point, right? Clearly defined routines. You've done this. This is nothing new. What I'm going to provide for you, and I think Anna from day one, She talked about this too. I happened to watch hers and I was like, ah, she stole my line. But you've done this before so that we're not overwhelmed. You have your routines. When students are going to go to, need to use the restroom, you have a routine for that. There's a million different routines. And hopefully you guys are sharing some of those in the chat, which I can't see right now, but I'm sure there's some sharing, right? You know how to do that. Your different procedures. Where do you hand in work? How do you do it? How do you get Chromebooks out? All of those things. Raising hand, getting in groups, lining up at the door, not lining up at the door, all of that, right? But again, in blue, for our students of trauma, and this is going to help everyone. Everyone's been traumatized to some degree. Global pandemic, pretty traumatizing, right? So when we do these things, it reduces stress, right? Because we don't have the unknown. I know what to expect. Distance learning increases that. When I'm in your classroom every day as a student, I have other cues to look around. If I'm not too sure what I'm supposed to do, I wasn't paying attention when you went over numerous times the different procedures, I can kind of look to other students to see what I'm supposed to do. But I don't have that when I'm sitting at home on a Chromebook. So when we make these explicit, if we're using Google Classroom and we clearly are reminding students and have resources readily available, and with the procedures of when class meets and how to turn in work and what the work is that's coming up, what the homework is, you can't make this so explicit. Sometimes, our reaction sometimes when students don't follow a rule is we'll say, man, I told you this before. How many times do I need to go over this? We're going to talk about trauma-informed language, why that's not the best way to say it. Sometimes we're frustrated, and it can be frustrating. There's probably a reason why they didn't know it. It's going to be ever more important now just to support kids. They didn't know. So we need to then help them, right? And it's going to help them operate in a state of calm. We're going to see a slide in a minute that when you're in a state of calm, right, not in fight, flight, or freeze, now I can think at a high cognitive level. And obviously that's where we need our students to be. So I want to move to something that's practical. And you've done this before. So at the top is just happens to be our school. We're a PBIS school. We've adapted it to our needs, but we use a lot of PBIS structures. So Bulldogs are responsible, respectful, kind and safe. Oh, there is a typo though. Should be kind and safe. So in that middle box, it should be kind instead of safe repeated. But those are our classrooms. So all our classrooms have the same barks there. So we're the Bulldogs. I think that's great, right? Because now that's helping students know in all classrooms, these are some common things that I should be. Here's how I should be responsible or safe, those type of things. But then what are your own individual? And now this is in, at the end, there's a resource, some links and a folder. But I know for sure, if I was in person with you all, you do this every year. But are you doing this year? Have you thought of distance learning in this manner, right? How are you having kids enter the classroom? Are we explicitly teaching kids how to enter the classroom when we're within, synchronous learning? So for our school, and I imagine many, right, we're using Google Classroom. Most of us will use Zoom, but have I explicitly taught kids? Am I making a request for them to turn on their camera? Am I making, a request for maybe there is some bell work that I have that I'm repeating that type of thing, right? Attention signal. This one, we all have different things and that we use. Some of us use, call outs and clapping, and we use dimming the lights and standing in the middle of the room. All these awesome in-person things that now we can't use. But I think it's even more important to have an attention signal when we are in distant learning, right? Because of all the distractions that are potentially in our students' homes. So this one I didn't really think about until, and I must say, I didn't do this. I didn't think about this last spring. But in preparing for this, I'm like, this will be key. I want to start this off right away. How can I get the kids that I at least have some faith that they are now focusing on our synchronous work. All right, working independently. Do I have, am I explaining to kids what that looks like and how to do that? It was because as our balance of that asynchronous. So I think that is really important. And I didn't change the language on this intentionally to distance learning. I thought about it and I began to do that. But I really I want to drive home the point that you've done it. This is just going to be done in a different manner. You guys have this, right? You've got the skill, you've got the experience. And if you're new to the profession, one, welcome. And two, you've got colleagues, right? Because if you remember that earlier slide, the first thing was you've got to work with people. This is too heavy of lifting to do on our own, all right? Asking for help. We have to really make this one explicit. It's super easy when we're in person for students to ask for help, or I should say easier for students to ask for help, right? Because we're seeing them all the time. We're seeing them for 50 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Our school happens to be going, so we're going to follow our bell schedule, still on a modified kind of schedule. It's going to allow us, hopefully soon, to come back to hybrid using the same schedule. But I'll only see my students twice a week for 75-minute periods. Each of those days, I'll have synchronous lessons for 60 minutes. 30 minutes minimum. We can definitely, obviously, go more than that. Not much opportunity to ask for help. So with something like this, I'm inviting you, and hopefully you're sharing there in the chat. Are you providing a cell phone? I'm not saying you have to. At my school, a lot of teachers do. I have for years. I haven't had any problems with it. But also, we're going to talk about bandwidth and taking care of yourself. If that's not your style, then don't do it. And that's fine. But do you have maybe a link in Google Classroom where students can fill out a survey? We're going to talk about ticket out the door and how we can do that. Do kids have your email, and are you answering those emails? Are you providing time during synchronous lessons where you're fielding questions, right? Because in our normal in-person, what do we do when that student is just, head down? We're going up to them, we're working the room. So we meet kids more than halfway asking for help. The kid who's on their phone or doing something or cleaning their shoes again for the third time that day, and they look on point, but they haven't started their lesson. Probably the first cleaning was because they care about their belongings. But the second and third time is they probably were having some difficulty with the lesson. I can reach out to them, but pretty hard to do that when I'm not with them, when they are not there in my home, or when we're not in the same classroom, when I'm not in the home with them to be able to help them, right? And some others. So this is there. I think this really was helpful for our staff when we went through it. And what we did is, and you could still do it in a virtual PD, we worked on it individually, just the typical, right? We worked on it and then we shared. And we shared in pairs, then shared tables, then we shared out. I floated this by a number of our veteran teachers, as well as some of our new teachers, asking, would this be helpful if we did it in PD? They all thought it would be because they wanted to learn from one another. And people picked up some amazing tips. So again, please share with one another. All right, so I've talked about this, trauma-informed language. So we know what trauma is, right? And we know the impact that it has on us and on our students. But there's a certain way, and you'll see this with PBIS as well, because it is trauma-informed. How do we speak to our students? So I've got a couple things there. Again, that initial slide with the goals, we don't have enough time. I mean, we could go full day and still not get deep enough with trauma and with any of these. So I'm trying to, some things to think about and some tools to leave with. First one, inquire rather than demand, right? So let's think first in person. Students just sitting there. Every day we have some bell work, right? I have it projected, and every day my students are supposed to come in and respond to the prompt if I'm an English teacher, or perhaps I'm a math teacher and there's some questions. But that students they're just kicking it. So I can say, hey, I need you to get to work. What are you doing? Those type of things. Maybe I'm frustrated. He or she does that every day, right? That's obviously not going to build a relationship. Nor am I going to learn why they're doing what they're doing. Because they're going to go into what we saw before, fight, flight, or freeze. They're going to shut down and not respond. We've all seen that. They keep the power, and good for them, right? They're exerting their power. They're taking care of themselves. They go off on us, right? They're going to fight us, or they just bail, right? They run. So that is natural. That we're wired to do that. So you inquire, right? Hey, what do you need? Now, I'm thinking, man, we're like 4 weeks into the school year and we've done this every day, 20 days of this. Who cares? Just ask them, like, hey, what do you need? Hey, I saw you didn't get started. And perhaps if you know that there's triggers with the student, just ask him, how you doing today? Right? They know that you know, and everyone's seeing the same thing, but maybe I'm just having a conversation now. Maybe I don't even address that they're not working, but I've said hi to them and focused on them. And what conversation? Statements framed in a positive language. So one thing that I did not believe would work, when I first heard it, I was like, no way. So kids running in the hall. And I mentioned we're 6-12 high school. High schoolers, they do not run. Our middle schoolers run. Our middle schoolers run to lunch every day of the year. I'm sure you guys saw it when our middle schoolers came to our school. I hadn't taught middle school. Blew my mind. I love it now, right? Their energy and enthusiasm. I can yell, don't run, and it doesn't work. But when I say, hey, can you please walk? Oh, now they're doing that, right? If I ask that same student, maybe who hasn't started their warm-up, maybe I'm asking someone, hey, could I ask you to get out your pen, your book, right? Instead of saying, you don't have your book out again, right? Requesting what we'd like to see, same type of thing, right? So we're not correcting. Instead of saying, I only see 5 kids working, instead, you might be saying like, God, I'm really enjoying seeing that some people are really getting after this writing prompt. And if anyone else needs help, let me know. And and then you're going to the kids, right, individually. So instead of just always correcting, it also uplifts you. The more I do this, and I'm not saying that I don't slip into that where I'm triggered by an activity, something's going on. But the more that you get into this, your mindset is healthier, you're able to connect, right? I'm not getting into fight, flight, or freeze. And obviously that is key for us. Now, this last part, I was thinking about this because in our trainings, we're always talking about this done verbally. And I'm sure many schools and many trainers have talked about it in writing. But it made me think about our distance learning, that we really need to focus on this in writing. So as we reach out to students who aren't completing assignments or not showing up to Zooms, instead of maybe leading with, hey, it's the 3rd week and you haven't shown up, it might be, hey, I miss seeing you. What can I do to help? I've noticed, we all like to be noticed, that you haven't been coming to Zoom. Is there anything you need, right? If we're providing feedback on a paper, we know, regardless of what the subject area is, when we frame things, right, when we're giving positive reinforcement on the paper and positive guidance, doing those same 3 things, right? Asking with perhaps, I'd like to see you, a student who he or she provides extremely short responses, perhaps if it's English, really no details. We might want to say, you must provide more details. Hey, I'd really like to hear what you think about this. Could you provide me a little bit of an insight, a few more details, so I can truly understand? Now, I'm writing more. The comments take a lot longer. But with that distance, we've got to keep that relationship alive. When we go in the reverse, when we don't use trauma-informed language, we can turn a kid off. In person, if I snap on a kid, I'm feeling horrible. They shut down. Even in person, I may never rebuild that relationship, right? I've just had a huge impact on that student's success. But I'm going to see them every day. I'm going to see them around campus. I can more easily repair that relationship. They can feel it that I want to, like, as I come to them. But in distance learning, I can't access. I can send them an email. I can call them, which if I did something wrong, I believe you have to do. But we have to be careful of that language to make sure we're preserving that relationship. I think that's super essential in this distance learning model that we're in. So getting to social emotional learning, why do these tools work, right? Why does trauma-informed language work? Why do having these expectations work, having these procedures, these clear expectations, right? How does it connect to social emotional learning? And what do we know about it? So one of the sources you'll have at the end, Castle, they've got, it's amazing work. I didn't inundate you with too many resources. There's so much on this. But this is the wheel they have, and we're going to break it down in the next slide with these 5 different areas, right? So let's look at this slide. It's a little small. Again, you do have the resource when, that'll be posted after this. But these are things that we do naturally when we're in person, but we still can do it when we're in distance learning. So we embed these things in our normal teaching. So things such as self-discipline, providing students with planners, right, for our class, or maybe if you have an advocacy program or a homeroom, those type of things, maybe there is a planner that all students are using where all teachers are making sure kids have things recorded. Well, I'm providing help with self-management, right? I'm helping them goal set and plan. Responsible decision making, we do that all the time in our lessons. So SEL it's not new to us. We do it instinctively. But my challenge or my request of you, to use more trauma-informed language, is we lesson plan, right? We think just so much about our lesson, and the minute we get done with it, we think, I should have planned this better and this would have gone on, and we're thinking about it for the next time we have the opportunity. Much of this work is who we are and how we relate, kind of on the fly, because it just becomes the way we do things. But I think we really have to plan for the way that we approach things, this tiered engagement, that I think we really have to make plans. How are we going to do this? And can we do a little bit of teaching this explicitly? Now, what can you control? What can't you control? I'm not asking you to create lessons that are just explicit on these things. Perhaps your advocacy programs, your homerooms, or your AVID programs, they can do that because that's the nature of those classes generally. But these things you can infuse. So as you're planning your science lab, what can you do? How can you infuse some of these? Because it's going to bring down students' anxiety, right? It's going to get them to a place where they can think in a more cognitive fashion. So take a look at this. Here we're getting to some brain science, and this is so as we go to trauma, ACEs, environment, right? What's going on with SEL. And I know I'm kind of moving a little bit quickly, but I want to make sure we spend plenty of time with our some more tools. The 1, 2, 3 is it's going in a counterclockwise pattern from our brainstem. But what I like about this slide, and I stole it, but the neat thing about this is that it's saying this information in a positive, right? In a trauma-informed language. Oftentimes I see it as the reverse. When this doesn't happen, and kids can't think. So look at this in the positive. And we do this in our classrooms. So help regulating students, right? So that they're feeling emotionally calm and settled. Can we do some breathing exercises? Even when we're in distance learning, can we have students take a breath, pause, quiet down for a moment, right? Brings it down a little bit. I realized how fast and how furious I've been talking, so that felt good for me to do. Sorry that I'm hitting this at such a pace, but I want to get through it. When I do that, right, now students are able to relate to others, right? So now they're relating to others. Now they're feeling supported. Think of us as adults. Again, using in person, I'm agitated and I go into my colleague's room and I want to vent and all kinds of stuff. It's kind of hard to connect with them. But on a good day when I'm smiling, I go in, hey, how you doing? How's your day been going, right? I'm calm. I'm emotionally available. I'm creating community. And then they're like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about this lesson, or let's do this project across curriculum. Now I'm able to move up to number 3, right? And now I can think on a cognitive level. But it begins with one. If I'm not settled, if I'm not relaxed, if I don't have norms in my classroom, my kids don't know what to expect. If they don't know when I'm going to hold a synchronous lesson. So if your schools aren't, or your districts aren't requiring you to, set a schedule, please set a schedule. It's going to help you too, because you'll know, like, all right, these are the times I'm with the kids. But it's also, your students will know what to expect. Their parents will know what to expect, right? You're bringing down some anxiety, right? And I know we're all over the place with different districts and different plans, but I think those things are important, right? I know how to turn in work. I know how to access. It's that last grid, that matrix that I showed you, right? When I know all those things, I know how to deal with Mr. Roth's class. I know what to expect. And a student who might not be able to, they're like, that's easy, I can show you. But when they don't know what to expect, they're not going to know how to think. All right. So how do we do these things? How do we help them move from 1 to 3? Mindfulness, I mentioned that, right? And these are just a few tools. They are endless, but I didn't want to overwhelm in some things that you can dig into. There'll be some resources on mindfulness, some body scan meditations that are short that you can plug and play. Naroga Institute, who we've worked with a lot at Encina, are an amazing, amazing organization. There's some links to their work. They have tons of free resources. You can do it with your kids synchronously. Do it for yourself as well. Take breaks and move. Our students move from class to class, right? Several times a day. But now they're in their home, perhaps the whole day. We are too. And I request that you get up and move and try to take a walk and try to stretch. Perhaps do some if it's yoga or working out or running or just moving, right? Zoom after Zoom after Zoom takes its toll on your body. Consistent structures, I think I've beat that one up quite a bit. Trauma-informed language, we've talked about that, right? You can go back to that slide, is how are you approaching in that manner? That'll help us create community. There are all kinds of warm-up. If you go back and you look at the first 2 days of this series, you're going to see some awesome ways to create community from day one. So I didn't put those in here because people already covered them who are experts on that. So there you've got your relate. And then the reasoning, keeping in mind there's a potential for the inability to focus cognitively. There's that potential. So do I get frustrated at a kid who's turning in a lackluster paper, what I feel is lackluster, and then just blame them that they're not trying? Maybe there's a reason, right? Maybe I need to get 1 and 2 in place. Trauma-informed curriculum. Be careful of what you assign. Is it triggering? Do kids, the same reason we don't give the ACEs test right away. Are you providing them with something that is culturally appropriate, that won't trigger? And pacing and grading. I don't know where all districts are with grading. We're going back to our normal grading. I personally think we have to be cognizant that students may not be able to meet deadlines as easily, maybe retrying an assignment, retesting, all of those things, and pacing, chunking in smaller bits, right? Because we're not in person and able to do that. But you already do that. You already scaffold. You're already thinking every year, how should I tweak my grading system? What is my team members doing? So you're already working on those things, okay? I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but go back to this. Restorative questions, you've probably seen it. Restorative circles. Sometimes you can circle up as a class every meeting, once a week as a check-in. But when harm is caused and we use restorative questions, as you look at the language, it's not accusatory. So on the side that's saying when challenging a behavior, when a student has acted out that's caused harm, we're not saying, why did you do that? You're not asking them, what happened? A third point, when you're being evaluated by your administrator, always a good time. When they say, I noticed you did, and you did, and you did, where do you go? You get defensive. But if they have some data and said, hey, I noticed this with your students, or not even your students, with the students, or I noticed this, right? That third point. So these questions can really help us. I had it in here because as things happen, a student can still act out in distance learning, or someone who's harmed, right? You're getting into them. They're inquiry-based questions, and we talked about that. Now this I want to move into, and I need to pick up the pace a little bit, but this is a great tool to first think of where we are. So it's called the social discipline window, sometimes called some different things. If you notice, we've got control from bottom to high. Teachers oftentimes like a lot of control. And then there's support, right? Going from left to right. Where are you with this? And as you look at this grid, or this, I'm sorry, these boxes, right? In that bottom left corner, little control in your class, limited support. You've walked by this classroom. Teachers, on their computer, kids are just running amok. They're outside the class. They've already two have run into your classroom, getting a phone, handing something to another kid, getting a drink, right? All of that stuff. Then that top, as you move up, punitive, right? Authoritarian. Don't do that in my classroom. You can't do that. You kids always do, right? Stigmatizing. Or that bottom right. The bottom right, that's supportive. It comes from a high level of care and compassion. You really care for your kids. But as we just went over before, that you're probably not providing at the same time these structures and these supports. So I kind of like the language, not kind of, I do like the language, right? Are you doing things to kids? Are you not there for them? Are you doing things for them? Or are you doing things with them? And if you'll notice with the with, it's authoritative, but not authoritarian, right? Because it's respectful. It's culturally responsive. So take a look at this. It's just applying this a little bit more. And again, I know I'm hitting you with a lot of info, but I love that the way CTA is doing this. This is out, and you're going to see that you can get in contact with me. And actually, I'm going to open up a Zoom after this if people want to get deeper with this, so we can slip right into that and have more time. But as you look through this, like the two, that upper left, that authoritarian, kids who grew up with disapproval, right? Here you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Look what happens to them, right? Loss of self, gradual agreement with the adult. Now they're feeling that they are not worthy. We talked about that before. You are damaging the students, right? If we're doing things for, going down to the bottom right, if I'm always doing things with a student, and again, this has been studied, it can a poor me mindset. They're feeling helpless, right? They might not verbalize, oh, poor me, but perhaps it's a lot of, I can't and I can't. We struggled a lot with this one at our school, right? But when you're doing things with, and this is hard, I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying if you haven't dug into this, that you're going to pop right into this day one coming back, right? But that's when we're there, we're setting boundaries, they're healthy, right? We're being predictable. It's everything that we said. So I wanted to give you some tools, some mindset. We have some more things to go through. But where are you with this box? And it takes time with this. Talk to colleagues about it, especially those that you trust. All right, so some classroom practices. This one is, I think, really fascinating. So as you go through this and you're setting up your classroom, what this does is it shows you what strategies and why it's trauma informed. So as you dig in this, you'll see things such as, let's go 3 down, teaching classroom routines, right? So if we have school-wide expectations, are my classroom expectations consistent with that? And then when we look about it, clearly defined routines and procedures, right? Kids know what to expect. It's reducing their stress. We've been talking a lot about that, right? Active supervision. Now that's a big one, and we do it all the time, all day, in person. How are we going to do it when we're not with the kids? Do we use GoGuardian? Do we use something, something else that we're with them, more checking in, two-way communication? So this is a planning tool that really has helped a lot of us in going through and really causing us to examine. And it goes on with some more, right? So class-wide groups, contingencies, multiple opportunities to respond, that bottom one, it's difficult, right? I can have a ton of things going on when I'm in person, but we can do it here. We can do ticket out the door. We can do a check for understanding. We can do it with just on thumbs up. We can get verbal. We can do a lot of different things, but we have to do these things, and it'll tell you if it's trauma informed. So I think this tool, spend a little time with it, and you don't have to, you're not mastering this before going back. You're referring to this throughout, right? All right, I mentioned ticking out the door. Here's how I think, and I didn't do this in the spring, but I'm going to do it as we move into the fall. Google form. I'm only going to put 3 questions, right? Likert scale really quick. because I just want to get a pulse of the students and of the class. So how well did you understand the lesson? I'm requiring that one. How do you feel mentally, emotionally, or physically? Right? Kids start to get honest. It might be fine, fine, fine. Oh, now they're not. Okay. And then anything you'd like me to know, probably blank most of the time, but maybe not. Now I'm giving them a way to ask for help. I said that earlier, and here's a way you can do that. But the things I'm going to say is it's critical it's done every day. It can't be intermittent, because the day they need it and you don't do it, now you've kind of, in their eyes, maybe betrayed them. So you have to do it every day. Just have it automatic. And then you got to follow up with kids that are in need. You have to follow up with them. So what I recommend, schedule it into your day. You've got, just as you have your classes blocked off, so you're there with the kids, schedule time for emails. My nemesis. Everyone who knows me knows that. I'm starting to schedule email time. I will not take meetings. I will not do anything else. Do this too. Schedule it so you know you can get back with the kids. Okay, so ticket out the door. Student planner. This is in the resources. We did planners school-wide, where we did it through our advocacy program, and teachers would, okay guys, take it, if I was the English teacher, take out your planner. Here's what we're doing this week. And then as an advocacy teacher, which I also teach, then I can go, hey, I noticed you don't have anything for English. What's going on in that class, right? It also allows me the ability to have a conversation with kids. Well, we'd move this, and there's a Google form or a Google Doc in the folder. We moved to doing this virtually, and you'll see an example here. This is one of our last year's 12th grade advocacy teachers. So she did a sample for kids, and I really recommend doing this because it will allow you to have an exchange with students. They know more about you. It also keeps you accountable, because we have to keep self-care. And I'm picking up pace because I didn't manage my time well. So I see that we're kind of getting late here. This one I'm going to move through quickly because this is heavy lifting. But this is a whole form here for teacher managed and office managed. And I broke it up here as you go through it. We made agreements with our office staff, what we will manage and what they need to manage. And then some suggested strategies. So take a look at that. And I'm sorry to do this to you. This is probably the last thing I'll have really time. You need a way for, because we're talking tiered engagement. So I've talked a lot about tier 1 and tier 2. But when it comes to our tier 3 kids, this big form here, I wanted to see it as a whole. When we have a situation with a student and I just can't reach them effectively, right? I don't know what to do. I've documented my that top part, all the tier 1 behaviors and what I've been trying to do, my interventions. Then I send an email to their teachers and I phrase it in the positive. Hey, I'm having a struggle. I've tried these things. It's not working. Has anyone had success? What's going on in your classroom? I hope that I hear, so if you look at this, I hope I hear some positives that then I will try. Because if it's working in other classes, why don't I try the tool? Okay. If nothing, if all the teachers are like, man, I'm having some struggles, then we kick it up to our LST, our learning support team. We happen to have that resource. For many schools, then it needs to go to your counselor. Keep in mind, if not your counselor, it goes to your VP, especially in distance learning. It goes to admin. Admin is here to support teachers. Admin's #1 responsibility is teaching and learning through us to support us. And no animosity towards them, but that's what they're here for. So then you have to connect with them. I can't connect with the student. I don't know what to do, right? And then we have a process where LST follows up and then teachers. So I wanted you to see this as kind of a goal, all right? In the little bit of minutes, this is here, a request for student support. How do students reach out? We have this posted around school. You'll see it in a PDF that students can fill out and hit submit. But the key about this is that we're going to start putting it out on our website and our social media and ask teachers put it in their Google classrooms because it's that essential. And this is here for you too. And I broke it down in the slideshow to show, as we move through this, we're always going with strength-based. And in only a couple minutes, I want to move to this. All right. And I'm sorry to do this for you. Mental health resources, I have this posted in there. I think if you can make this available to students, I've got some 24/7 national hotlines, as well as you'll see Sacramento local things. But again, kids to be able to turn to it. They may not ask you for help or know. They may be brand new to your school, but they can call and take care of themselves. So we went from level 1 to level 2. These are our level 3, right? We can't control all of this. So then if we, when we rely on our admin and counselors, who are going to have a tough time. The counselors are going to be working hard, and we can provide these supports. Then we're helping our tier 3 kids. So here's the resources. I only threw up a few. I'm happy to provide more. These resources about mindfulness. There's a lesson plan up there to get you started, and then why it works, how it programs the brain, neuroplasticity, and how that works. All right. And then as we move here, I'm going to end here. This is what I would like to challenge or to offer to you. Self-care, number one. Bandwidth. If you've heard the term, right, used to us, we only have so much bandwidth. We can only take on so much. So please learn to say no. Do what you can. Focus on what you can control. But what are you doing to take care of yourself? So what's one thing? Just one thing. Doesn't have to be a lot. Doesn't have to be a whole life change. Support network. Who do you want on your team? And what do you think you need? Okay, who do you need with you? Right? Create at least one person on your team. Especially if you're at a new site, talk to your department chair, talk to your reps, talk to your faculty reps, right? Reach out if you're at a new site this year. And then again, I keep on saying it, consider setting 1 or 2 goals for things inside of your control. And you're gonna have to some degree, let go of those things outside of your control to some degree, because you can't handle everything, unfortunately. If you wanna follow up, there's my contact information. If there's some urgent needs, we can debrief in the Zoom. There's that information. And then there's a self-care website that I'm doing for teachers that I've been doing that in person. Email me if you want that, because that will be coming soon. Went over by a few minutes and had to speed through a few things, but I thank you guys. I hope it was beneficial. I'm looking forward to reading the chat and learning from you. And I hope people reach out, because we can get better. CTA, thank you for this, right? We're stronger together. And we've got some big challenges. So Adam, I'll hand it over to you.
Before we go off the slide, could you just provide people with an idea of how they're able to access that meeting ID there?
Yeah, so if they are in Zoom, they can pop in that meeting ID. I try not to give too many numbers if they're quickly, writing things down. So I made the password easy, CTA-IPD.
Right.
But yeah, if you can write that down. If you can't pop into this, I hope people do. And but reach out. Shoot me an email. Give a call, and I may, and I'll make myself available for people. Doesn't have to be today. It can be another time. Thank you.
We are great, Barry. We are so grateful for you, and for you sort of sharing kind of where you are at Encina High School and what you're thinking about doing, or what you are doing to support students as they come back to virtual school, come back to distance learning. And I am so appreciative of the way that you're helping practitioners translate their strengths, the things that they know, the things they already do, into this context, as well as providing some opportunities for us all to stretch. So we are grateful for you, and we are grateful for your willingness to share. I also have to say, just the ideas, the collaboration I saw in the chat with everybody was phenomenal, including one person who said that they would love for you to facilitate a trauma-informed 1 hour session where you're the teacher and we're the students, and so you could model it for us. So maybe an idea we could try to twist you around into doing. But would you mind advancing the slide?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Eric. All right, so this is what it looks like next week. We're gonna move into culturally relevant pedagogy. There's gonna be an elective day on Tuesday as well as Thursday, and focused on tools for collaboration, English language development, more language learning in a distance context, right? So that'd be appropriate if you're a foreign language teacher as well. And then special education support, and then a colleague from Sacramento County Office of Education, Tara Turrentine, and I will be kind of taking some of the themes you heard here today and applying it to understanding the struggles of homeless and unstably housed students, and how this crisis has really elevated the struggles that they face every single day, and what you can do at a tier 1 level, what you need a team to do, and what you need specialists to do, and is not on you. So we're going to be covering that on Thursday. Next slide, please. Oh, look, there I am. Jeez. That's mildly terrifying. I'm super excited to like come out from behind the desk and actually do some work, actually do some sharing of some resources, some strategies, approaches to anti-racism and culturally relevant pedagogy. We're going to look at how, like, we're going to look at how do you open spaces of productive tension where students are able to explore, students are able to build agency and awareness and a basis for advocacy and collective action. We're going to consider the creation of ecosystems around students, ecosystems of knowledge to help achieve those ends. I'm honored to kind of be co-doing this with the 2019 Teacher of the Year. And so this is going to be fun. We've been working on this for the past few weeks. It's been like some wonderful professional learning and for myself, and I'm excited to share it with you all, hear what you think. So with that, I think we're gonna say a formal thank you. We hope to see you next week. Thank you for everything you're doing to make our students feel connected and safe and honored. And we are grateful for you. And we are going to continue to keep listening to what your needs are and responding by connecting you with other educators, right? The people who are doing the things that you are doing right now. So with that, we're going to do an official goodbye. All of your resources, all the slides, all of the well, could you advance one more? Sorry, Barry.
Wow, good.
So all of the resources, all the slides, everything is now on the online event page. We're also hyperlinking the videos to a CTA page so that they're beyond this series. I just updated the online events page. Everything should be there. Videos typically show up 24 hours after the session, maybe a little bit more. And also we'd encourage you, if you want to hear more from Barry, if you want to hear more on this topic, please do fill out the session feedback. Also available is the reflection for your certificate of completion. Remember, one certificate of completion, one reflection per session, and we'll follow up in September with one certificate that lists all of the sessions that you did attend. So with that, I'll say thank you so much. We're grateful for you. And if you would like to navigate to the Zoom meeting room, then Barry, I think you're headed there next.
I'm definitely headed there next.
Awesome. I'll join you as well.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.